How's it going, everybody? So welcome back to another Producer's Log. Happy to have everyone here. I'm very excited to have everyone joining us on the various platforms, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, all that stuff. We're going to have Instagram up in a minute. We're going to get started on some questions here. We got a bunch from the students. I'll see if I can get those up right now. Here we go. Alrighty. Here we are. Okay, UXL. Here we go. Question time. All right, cool. Let's get up our restream chat here. Let's make sure that this is over there. All right, cool. So now I can see everyone's chats. Should be as they pop in. We're still trying to work on getting YouTube all hooked up so that it actually pops into the chats over here, over here this way. Yeah, we're doing our best getting these things all put together and trying to bring you the best quality stream that we possibly can. So yeah, we're always making changes and updates. We got new lights and whatnot. You probably saw those last time, but we also have a little different microphone setup, added a compressor to the chain, all, trying to get some upgrades going here. So hopefully they make a little bit of a difference. I'm going to go through and I'm going to see if I can find where our last question was. We get the questions from students in an ever continuing and ever growing list. So it is really cool to have all of these in one place. It can be a little tough to find our spots again. I think we were around 134. Okay. Yeah, okay. All right, I know where we are. So today we have about 10 questions, 12 to be exact. So we're not going crazy on the questions today, which is good because we're going to be talking about gear upgrades, how, why, and when to do them, and give you some kind of tips and advice along with some experiences of my own and hopefully your own as you're watching and joining in. But that's going to be the topic for today. We're going to do a big discussion about it, and hopefully we'll have some other people joining in the chats for that. Let's get the Instagram stream going so they can join in with the questions. I'll do a little intro for them in a second. They get a new microphone too because I've noticed that they're very echoey, so we want to give them the good quality streams too. It's important to have that quality. Okay, let's raise that up. Okay, let's get this started. Hello, Instagram. So we're back with another Producer's Log live stream. This is a live AMA work stream so that you can ask me anything about photo, video, media, production, stuff in general, freelancing, small business type things. And hopefully, we can discuss these topics and get a whole bunch of people involved. Today, we're going to be talking about gear, when, why, and how to upgrade your stuff for photo and video applications. We'll be talking about some examples and discussing some of my experiences. Hopefully, we'll have some of your experiences joining us as well. We'd love to hear in the chats reasons why you chose to pick certain gear, pieces of gear that you love, all kinds of things like that. We're going to get an across-the-board discussion here and hopefully get some good some good advice from people. We are going to start off as always with our question segment here. We have about 12 questions today, so nothing crazy. We're not doing 2.5 hours of questions like we did previously, but we are going to answer your questions as we go along. So feel free to put a message into the chats. If you're on Instagram, I would love it if you hopped over to UXL's either Facebook or YouTube account. You can follow and chat in live there. Or if you go over to Twitch, FCMG_Producers Log, then you can actually have your chat show up in the live stream itself, which means that they're always going to be in the video. People will be able to see your questions. I will read as many as I possibly can through the chats, but we tend to get a whole lot of activity with waves and so many people joining on Instagram. So it's a little hard to tell which ones are questions sometimes, and they tend to fly past pretty quickly. So I will be paying attention to the restream chats, which again, you can find Full Coverage Media Group on Facebook. That's my page. Or you can also go to FCMG_producers log on Twitch. Had a little fugue state there for a second. Or you can also do it. Thank you, Nate Williams, for sharing the stream. Appreciate it, buddy. Or you can also head over to UXL's YouTube or Facebook accounts to actually join in the chat. So, as always, this video is sponsored by UXL Career and Learning Network. Are you interested in learning a new skill? UXL is a leading provider in online training. They host courses from top-rated instructors across the globe. Find courses on just about any subject and join a community of over 500,000 passionate learners. Visit uxl.com and register today. I've taken some courses on UXL. I've done the digital photography course, the Photoshop course, and I had a Dreamweaver course for a while there that I didn't actually end up using. Eliza Kovek, or Alza Kovek, apologies about the pronunciations. I'm constantly butchering names on here. Hello, it's good to see you. It's good to see everyone joining in on Instagram and chatting there too. But let's get into some of our questions here. We've got about 12 to go today. So nothing crazy. I'm going to get a sip of water before we get into this though. You got to have water on hand for these long streams. Hey, Sankey Lamus. How's it going? It's good to see you. We got you patched in over here. So thanks for chatting in. All right, let's get into our questions here. Our last question was from Dara Singh. That was about a potential client. Thanks to everyone who chatted in with the questions last time. We had something like 33 questions, and it was a really great session. Long Q&A. Today we're going to start with Brandon Walsh's question. Can rain ruin my camera and equipment? I live in the West Coast and it rains a lot. Actually, no, we missed Dara Singh's question. Okay, so we're going to do Brandon Walsh's, then we're going to go back to Dara's. Can rain ruin my equipment? I live in the West Coast and it rains a lot. I don't mind, but I don't want my equipment to get ruined if I shoot when it's wet outside. That's something that you'll have to look up on a specific camera basis. So a lot of these new like mirrorless cameras, they're coming with a weather sealed kind of rating, which means that if you have a weather sealed lens as well, if it's an interchangeable lens camera, then that means that you can be out in the rain and all that stuff. And as long as you don't take that lens off, your equipment should be fine. There can be some situations where, if you're opening the battery case or your SD card slot, if you're doing any of that stuff and you're working with anything internal, that can affect your camera, obviously. But there are some other things that you actually need to be aware of, even if your camera is weather sealed. You do need to be aware of changing temperatures. So I had friends who lived up north in Canada, and they would, if it was really cold outside, they would take their camera lenses in a bag, and I forget if they would put them outside beforehand, maybe like a couple hours beforehand to let them acclimate to the weather, or I think that was it. So they would store their camera equipment, but then they would bring it outside so that it would actually be at the right temperature if they were going to be doing outdoor shoots. That way, if they put a warm lens on a warm camera and then walk out into negative 15 degree weather, it's not going to be suddenly super fogged up and filled with condensation, which can actually lead to like mold and stuff like that in your lenses over time. But I've done some shoots with my A6400, and actually just the other day we were out shooting with the FS5 and the 18 to 105 lens that comes on this camera. And this thing is, I don't think it's completely weather sealed because it has rubber caps on all of the ports, but at the same time, there are some spaces like up top here. This top handle actually has like a data connector port to it. There's an internal microphone right on the end of this thing. So if you're not using a shotgun mic or something like that, then you still can capture audio with this camera. But that connects via a little data connection into there. So I'm always careful about water getting into this section here, especially. So even with this, even though it says weather sealed, I'll typically take a plastic bag and wrap it around everything except for the lens. And that will keep this mostly contained from rain, good from condensation or fog or anything like that. So Brandon, that's a great question. If your equipment is rated for a weather seal or an IPS rating of some sort, which is a waterproof rating, that means it can actually be submerged to a certain level. I think there's certain IPS ratings that just mean like rain and stuff like that falling on it is all you can really reliably be protected from. But check those ratings. It should be in spec sheets in your cameras. B&H Photo Video should have some specs for you. You can definitely check that stuff out there. So great question, Brandon. Be careful with that equipment. Be careful with yourself out there, or, shooting in the rain. Don't go slipping down any mountainsides. I know the West Coast has some beautiful mountain country, but you got to be careful when it's rainy. Thank you for your question. We're going to move on to actually question 135, which I skipped over here. Dara Singh asked a question. I sent a quote to a potential client that needed a photographer for a major event. I really wanted the job, but I have a feeling they went in a different direction. Is it a bad idea to email them and ask why I wasn't awarded the job? I really want to know so I can understand where I went wrong. So what I would really say there is that can be a double-edged sword. It depends how much experience you have in the field, how long you've been in business, really. I think if you're just starting out, then that's kind of totally acceptable. Like, you could message them. I would definitely be careful about your wording and how you say things to the client. You have to remember that your tone of voice that you're hearing in your head might not necessarily be the tone of voice that a client will read your email with. So you want to really be careful that you can't misinterpret what you're saying as passive aggressive or upset in any way, because you can't imbue emotion into an email. So that might be something that could even be better in a phone call, just so they can hear you go, something more relaxed, like, hey, so I was just really curious, if I didn't get the gig, I'm curious why I didn't, and I would just love to know some pointers so that next time I spec some gigs, maybe I can adjust my my approach a little bit. Or even maybe there's maybe you had a budget or something like that. Like, I could totally be adjustable and we could maybe come to a common ground here. So you could even use that as a way to possibly still secure that gig, as opposed to saying, hey, why didn't I get it? And then they can kind of read that email and be like, hey, why didn't I get it? And they'll see it as like an upset reaction. That might prevent them from either A, giving you that information in the first place, or B, hiring you in the future. So be careful about that email. I would be kind of reticent to send something like that. I tend to just go, okay, well, this was something that I felt maybe I could have come down on, or like I look at my side of things and where I could have adjusted. And if it's really if it's a really solid quote from me, it's not something that I feel can really be adjusted that much. Maybe they want a whole lot of light in this one location where there's no power. Well, all of a sudden it's just going to be, a whole lot of lights that you're bringing, and you're going to have battery power for everything, or you're going to have to rent a generator. Like, when it comes to things like that, there's a cost to doing business. So don't go below your cost, but maybe see if you can get in contact with them and see if you can be a little flexible with them. So yeah, that's a great question. And Jonah Newberg, yeah, that last question we had was fantastic too. I'm often wondering about that myself. I've gotten into some pretty wet situations. I would love to hear experiences that you've had. Add into the comments and let us know. Jonah Newberg is watching on YouTube, which again still isn't quite coming up over here, but I got to get these things kind of connected. I think it's because my typical accounts are associated with a different profile that I stream to. This is a restreaming thing, so hey. But we are getting the questions, and that's awesome. Jonah, I would love to hear your experiences with working in wet situations, what sort of issues you've faced, and things that may have surprised you. Like, hey, I dunked the lens of my camera accidentally into a thing, but because it was a prime lens, it doesn't have any moving parts, then, hey, there was no water that got into it. It was actually sealed as a lens, which is pretty cool. So definitely curious about that. Okay, cool. Let's move on to our next one. Okay. Majid Zakar asks, do you have any thoughts on 6D versus 5D Mark II? I'm not familiar with Canon cameras, and I really wish I was, because honestly, a lot of people say a lot of good things about the color representation that their sensors have. And notice I didn't say color science there, because saying color, like the Canon color science is the overarching name for that stuff in general. So every camera has color science. It's not that they're specific color science, you know, that's just the general term. So the color representation on Canon cameras is pretty great. I've heard a lot of really good things. I've seen a lot of images that I really liked, and a lot of ones that just came straight out of camera that they really liked. 5D Mark II, I've heard a whole lot of great things about the whole 5D line. I remember when the 5D Mark, I think it was the Mark II that came out that had, or was it Mark 1 that had video? It was 1080p, 24 and 30 frames per second that you could shoot on this camera. It was one of the first cameras that you could really, first DSLRs that you could really do that with. And I think it was the Mark II that was used on a bunch of actual films at the time. They would use it as a smaller camera, so they didn't have to have this huge, massive rig set up. So it could be a cool camera to adapt for video. I just honestly haven't heard that much about it. And there are updates to newer cameras that can make better older cameras sort of obsolete. So new cameras will have like hybrid or phase detect autofocus. That can be a huge point and a huge reason to upgrade to newer equipment as opposed to getting something that's older like that. I don't know how old the 6D is, honestly, just not very familiar with Canon cameras in general. Personally, I'm a Sony and used to be a Nikon guy. I switched over to Sony because I needed something that matched my big FS5 that I got through school. And I really liked their video autofocus capabilities, and that's all because of that phase detect autofocus technology. They also have things like face tracking and stuff like that. So it makes my job a whole lot easier as a videographer because that's my main gig. I started off as a photographer. I still do photography. I often have gigs doing maternity or newborn shoots or wedding stuff, engagements, all types of things like that. But my primary focus is definitely video. And I think that that's why I gravitated towards Sony. They have a lot of things that are geared towards video producers. Their color representation on their cameras tends to shift a little bit green, but if you pull that out, then it tends to be very, very accurate and accurate to real life. But yeah, the older Canon cameras like the 5D Mark II, I've heard some great things about those, so totally worth checking out. But I wish I could offer you some more experience. Scottish Monkey, how's it going? We got you on YouTube this time. If you do want to watch on Twitch, this is on Twitch under FCMG_producers log. Should be hosted on the actual FCMG Stay channel, which I think that's what's coming through here. Anyway, I'm going to figure those chats out. But yeah, I would love to hear any of your experiences. And this is to everyone. This isn't just to Majid Zakar, who asked the question. Again, thank you for that. But if... hey, Rosalea, good to see you on Instagram. If Liz, how you doing? Everyone's popping in now. This is awesome. Okay, so if you have experience with the 6D from Canon or the 5D Mark II, I would love to hear about it in the chats. Maybe we could get some information to Majid if he's watching the streams right now or if he's going to see it at a later date. That would be super sweet. Cool. Okay, let's move on to our next question. This is from one of our return questioners here. Actually, I've seen this name before. Jagmeet Singh. I'm trying to get a website going for my photography business. Are there any must-haves for the site? Do you have a sample of any photographers that have a really nice website that I could use for inspiration? Well, let's see. I could show you my old photography website. This was starting to become like a music video site, but let's see what this looks like. It's obviously going to be very... Here we go. Oh, nope. Let's do this. Properties. That's not what I wanted to show. We can go to... Webcam. Here. Go like that. There we go. Okay. Now you can see my screen. All right. So this is my old Stay Heavy Studios website. I have kind of scrolling images. They're big images. It does take the site a little bit longer to load than you know, Google search results would really like you to do. But I like the way that these scaled. They're still relatively compressed. I have linked to a video that I shot back in the day. That's going to be my old film reel. But yeah, I've got some little blurbs of information on a scrolling kind of a slideshow on there. I have very clear menu on there. Stay Heavy Studios was my old brand. I'm actually wearing an old shirt from them. Stay Heavy Studios right there. You can sort of see it. STAY. Boom. But yeah, links to your merchandise if you do that kind of thing. If you put merchandise up on shirts, your services. Contact is a huge one. It's good to have examples of your services. So I have photography services, graphic and web design, video production services, and each would be, tied to actual content that you've produced before. So, here's some various photos I've taken with people that I've worked with. You can see some example material, some cool stuff that I've some cool shots that I feel like I've taken. Some good symmetry and whatnot, and you can zoom in on the images and kind of check them out a little closer. So like we can look, this is my my buddy Brad from Ontario. It's good to see you, Brad. Yeah, anyway, okay, so we can go back here. There's easy navigation is a big thing, making it simple and making it easy for people to contact you. Various channels through which to contact stay. Don't be a stranger, send them a message and tell them how you really feel. Also get in touch about working together. That's always cool too. So yeah, name, email, phone number, message, real simple stuff. People can subscribe to my mailing list. I was trying to do a blog mailing list back in the day. This website though is basically dead. I just have it up for, kind of example purposes. You can have blog posts here. We have news, which is going to be updates of my travels, my blog posts and stuff like that. I changed my Instagram so it's not showing my Instagram token anymore. I've got some news posts here, these are actually more so like film reviews, but these adding blog posts and things like this can help get some traffic to your website, but it's a lot better if you can show expertise or like have an example video or something like that. So yeah, then these are all live links. So our studio partner, takes us over to King Studios. This get in touch with me. This takes you to the contact page, Instagram and Facebook. So it gives social media options to contact, email options to contact, and it basically just gives example material of what you can do. I like having like personalized reviews from people. If you can get stuff like that, that's fantastic. That's really good media to use on a website. And it can also really add some social proof to, hey, why is this person a good choice for me? I do have a new website now. Let's see. All right, we got some good stuff here. Liz is saying there are some really nice templates you can get as well. You don't necessarily have to build the whole website. Yep, Template Monster. Shopify also has some options. I worked with them for a long time. There's WordPress. There's all kinds of different options out there. WordPress is going to be free. You can install that and use that. Templates, I think, are going to be paid on there, but there are some great tutorials on how to build your own websites as well. There's other template-based builders that are free, like Wix. But Ashley could help answer some more website questions. She's much more well-versed on that than I am. So when it comes to building your own website and designing your own stuff, using templates, she's a great resource to talk to about that. Something like that. So this was through Shopify. The theme that I used was expensive. It was around $200. There is an ongoing cost of using that website. I was a former employee of Shopify, so I got some serious discounts, and that was the reason why I used that platform. It wasn't really for any other reason. I don't have a ton of experience with web work other than working for Shopify. Basic HTML stuff. Yeah, Eliza, it really depends. WordPress honestly has a lot more functionality. Shopify is a much better canned solution. If you're looking for something that's easy to build and easy to jump into as a first-time person, Shopify is a good resource. But when it comes to the actual cost of operation, it's going to be much higher through Shopify because that is an e-commerce platform. That means that they have a built-in like payments page, so you can get people to do credit card transactions through there and PayPal transactions through that website. So those built-in kind of solutions make it more expensive. But if that's what you're going for, if you're going for merchandise sales or product sales online, that can be a fantastic option. Whereas WordPress is a much better option for people who just want like a page site. They're not necessarily selling things directly through it, or if they're going to have a designer go through and customize this stuff for them, or learn to be a designer. Because if you actually want to design your websites, Shopify is not a great platform. You have to work through templates. You have to use a lot of their internal admin stuff in order to make it work. But, there can be benefits to both. It really is just what serves you best in the end. And that's going to be different for every person. So I wouldn't necessarily say that Shopify is better than WordPress. I would honestly say that WordPress is better than Shopify in a lot of ways. But Shopify, WooCommerce, there's a million websites that are like that have that sort of template builder stuff, will have an e-commerce solution built in, and are scalable in a way. So you can pay for a higher cost or a higher tier of subscription and get more services out of it and get more stuff automated and, get white glove services on your website design, all that stuff. So it really depends like what you're looking for. So I'll show you the website that I have now. Have not updated this in a little bit, but hey, we'll do what we can. Let's head back to our in-screen shot here. Okay, so this is Full Coverage Media Group. .com. Emmy award-winning media producers serving Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, Washington, D.C., and beyond. So it's just the northern East Coast of the United States. I'm based in Bethlehem, so I do a lot of work with PBS 39, which is a local studio. I've done work with eMediaWorks and King Studios and all that stuff. So I have here my main services, which are photography services, cinematography services, podcasting, and live streaming. I haven't recently added buttons to those just because I don't quite have content for those pages yet, and I don't really have standard pricing for that stuff yet, so I haven't really been showing that off too much. I'm a big fan of big images on websites. That's not really like the greatest thing for listing on Google, for having really good SEO and all that stuff. I also like, dark, moody photography, so it's sort of my own style of doing things. It's definitely not how I would suggest doing things for a photography website if photography is your main gig. Also, if your website is going to be your main means of earning, then I wouldn't necessarily go this way. I have a no-cost website right now. The only thing that I really pay for is my domain, and that's because I have an old staff account through Shopify. So I get a little bit of the ex-worker nepotism from Shopify, and that lowers my cost greatly. I do have to kind of change these over soon. We're in discussion. Basically, I had about 15 or 16 websites, and then over like when COVID started, I think they started going through their records or something like that. Their policies must have changed since I worked with them last, because now I'm no longer allowed to keep all of those 15 websites that I've had for like 3 years. So I am a little frustrated with them, and we might have a video at some point about that, discussing that topic. But yeah, I'm down to 3. I have to figure out which 3 I'm going to be using and keeping. But I still get to keep websites for free, so I really can't complain all that much. It's just that I had websites built with other people, so that can be a little annoying. Yeah. So this is the new one. We got new services for 2020: motion controlled slider, jib, gimbal, and motorized mountain board cinematography. That means I literally will ride a mountain board and hold a camera at the same time. 4-camera multi-streaming, 8-channel mobile podcasting, ProRes, DNxHR, high dynamic range film production. So these are things that I list that get me more work actively. So the fact that I have motion controlled slider, jib, gimbal, and a mountain board, and this hoverboard, all these kind of like electronic controlled things, it helps me get more gigs where they need motion control. I've worked on a couple short films just for those reasons. The 4-camera multi-streaming is great for companies that want to get in live stuff, but they don't want a huge, massive production studio doing all their stuff. 8-channel podcasting. Podcasting is getting really popular lately. I created a podcast as example work, and it's also been a whole lot of fun to actually do. And then the ProRes DNxHR, that's just, I have an Atomos HDMI recorder, so that means I get to do some higher dynamic range video recording. But yeah, shows our location, short little blurbs, nothing very long. This is my favorite equipment list. It goes through my kind of equipment through categories. There's some key pieces listed on here. There are some things that I would like to update, but I did a relatively recent update on that list, and I'm still pretty happy with it. A lot of these things are still my main go-to. I've got a cinematography reel there. Check out the podcast. We got an example video, which is me chatting with Nate Williams, who's that rapper from Northeast PA, from Nate East PA. Yeah. Northeast PA, NEPA area. Shows my Instagram here, so you can get in contact. And there's a clear contact page. Again, real simple. Send us a message, 484-876-1440. That's a Google Voice number. So it's not my personal phone number. It's basically a forwarding number that I can check the messages from, but I can also set to silent and know that anyone that gets in contact through there is all via work or now through these live streams here. So it's good to keep your personal information protected like that. But we have other ways to connect too. So through Facebook, you can check out my page. Instagram, you can check out my feed, my actual business feed, or hear my personal feed. And then YouTube as well. So having just ways to contact you, your typical services, like right here, services, cinematography and photography, about us, contact us. Nothing crazy, relatively simple for a website. Honestly, it could be live streamed, or it could be streamlined a whole lot more. But yeah, that's the current website that I have. And thank you for asking. That was lovely. I like talking about that. How long did it take to make your website? It took me, collectively probably 5 or 6 days of working on the website, learning all the different things that I needed to do, editing photos so that they fit, changing aspect ratios and whatnot, cropping things, etc. Okay, is there a reason Shopify is such a big deal? Okay, thank you for the response. Cool. KS Cliff asks, 1, how do you determine the price of photos or canvas ordered from site? Suggestions on vendors to produce photos and canvas for your products. And 2, how to copyright protect them. That's something I've mainly ignored with my images. A lot of people do watermarking to help copyright protect their images. A lot of times, if you shoot with your camera set to add metadata to your stuff, that XXIF file or whatever that is, will contain metadata about your files. And if you have those saved in an archive, it will show when you took that image, what image it was, what the original name is, and it will typically be a sidecar file associated with that. So that's the way that I've sort of used and retained copyright is just retaining the original metadata and the original file. So I have the raw file, I have the metadata that says that I took the image. Copyright Estate Van Fulton of Full Coverage Media Group. It has the date, it has the time, it has even the GPS location of where it was taken. So there's a lot of information on that photo that I have. So I don't typically watermark my images. I just know that if I Google reverse image search any of my stuff, if I find it, that I have the rights, I can prove that I have the rights, and I can prove whether or not X, Y, or Z person had the rights to actually post that image. I have contracts with all the people that I work with, so I have a literal paper trail of who paid me for what photos, who's allowed to use what imagery, et cetera, et cetera. So if it comes down to a question of someone else saying that a photo that I took is actually their photo, I have the proof. You can't really argue with metadata straight out of a camera from a device when you took the image. So that's the way that I've been doing it. And when it comes to pricing your photos or canvas ordered from a website, I've actually avoided that as well. There are some websites that you can go through, like Printful does, will plug into a whole lot of websites. I think they do WooCommerce. They also do Shopify. You can plug those into your websites, and they will give you the differences between, like, hey, you know, this is the markup that we suggest, or this is the Instagram. Are you hearing audio right now? I hope you are, because I have a new mic plugged in there, and I have a feeling that I might have just been talking blindly to them for a little while. So anyway, we'll see if they can actually hear it. Olivia, if you can hear this in Instagram, let us know in the comments below. I would really appreciate that. If you can't hear me, then type it down there. You know, we'll see if the audio is working or not. That would be a bummer. We got like 45 minutes of just no audio. Okay, so price of photos or canvas on the website. Typically what I do is I'll refer people to places to actually print these things, as opposed to saying, yes, I'll print them for you, and then I'll ship them to you, and then being responsible for that much of the process. You know, if their photos are taking a long time to print, then they just go to the printer and talk to them, as opposed to messaging me. It kind of makes it easier on my side. I just like to be a producer more than an actual, like, art seller or anything like that. I don't want to wear those hats. So I try to focus on other things and just sort of sell images to people directly. They can produce those. They can print them wherever they want. They can post them wherever they want once they have them. So to sort of answer your question there, Chaos Cliff, it becomes kind of a balance between what you want to focus on, what you want to actually use your time and effort on, and what you can kind of let go of. So that was something that I let go of. So I don't necessarily have the best advice for you, but there is, you know, there's tons of like videos and tutorials on how to mark up your products, what kind of margins you should be getting. There's also the stuff on sites like Printful or like Fine Art America. They have suggested rates for these things, and you know, you can always up those rates. You can always see what your market value is and adjust based on that. All right, cool. Well, let's get back to our questions here. We were Rain 5D Mark II. Okay, website going. Marlena Murrell is our next one. What is the largest memory card that is currently available? I keep running out of space because I shoot in RAW. Okay, well, that really depends on your camera. Some cameras they have a limit. Olivia, the phone that I'm using is a Galaxy S9, but we're also using a Boya microphone. It's a smartphone microphone, so the audio sounds a little bit better, hopefully. Not quite as echoey as it used to be on the Instagram streams. But yeah, I just wanted to make sure that you could actually hear what I'm saying on Instagram, because if you can't hear me, I would love it if you'd type it below, and then I can adjust the stream a little bit. But if you can, also let me know, and then I'll quit worrying about it. But okay. Largest memory card that's currently available. You're shooting in RAW. So if you're filling up your camera cards too quickly, check the specs of your camera. See if there is a max card size. A lot of point and shoots and a lot of smaller cameras like cell phones will have a limit. But when it comes to like digital cameras, a lot of them will have a much larger limit. So you can go up to like a 256 gigabyte card. Or awesome. Thank you so much, Olivia. I really appreciate that. That puts my mind at ease a little bit. We're chatting about questions from the class today. If you want to post questions on the actual chat and have me answer them directly, I can see your chat right now, but sometimes it goes a little bit quickly on Instagram. Definitely hop over to twitch.tv/FCMG_producerslog and ask some questions, or UXL's either Facebook or YouTube account, or Full Coverage Media Group on Facebook as well. I know it's a lot of places, but you can get questions to us that way, and then I'll see them in a list, and we'll be able to go through them. Okay, largest memory card that's currently available. I mean, there's probably largest capacity SD card. Let's see here. So there's, I'm seeing 2 terabyte SD cards. This looks like a total scam though. It says 2 terabyte, but it's $60 on eBay. I'm willing to bet that someone probably just printed out a little thing and stuck it right on top. There are 1 terabyte SanDisk Extreme Pros, which those I really like. These are the second generation, the 170 megabits per second, but they're $400 for a single card. So what I would definitely suggest is getting smaller cards. Sometimes there's some really, really good deals on these SanDisk Extreme Pros. Those are the camera cards that I use almost exclusively. I use their SD cards in, my drone, in my cell phones, in both of my cell phones, in my drone, also in my little Sony RXO Mark II right here, which this thing is fantastic. And we're going to talk about doing some how, when, and why to upgrade equipment like this, when to grab handles and little things that you can do to upgrade your equipment and make it really, 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 really cool. That'll be after these next 4 or 5 questions. We're getting to the end of our questions today, but about 1 terabyte is I think the largest unit of data that you can get on a single card, and have it actually be reliable and usable for 4K video or high capacity stuff that also needs to be high speed. Like if you're taking if you have your shutter speed set to high shutter speed, so or what is that, where you press the button and you hold it and it just goes dig 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 dig, and it takes as many photos as it can in a short amount of time. Some cameras are only limited by the buffer size on the actual card. So if you have a faster card, you'll be able to write those images to your card faster, and then that press and hold will actually last longer. Thank you, Olivia. I appreciate the kind words there. So yeah, definitely be aware of that. The right speed of your actual camera, the bit rate of the video that you shoot. So if you're shooting with a Blackmagic, 6K sensor, the 6K Cinema Pocket camera, that is going to have a 380 megabits per second bit rate. That 170 megabit per second card is not going to be fast enough to read that data at the right speed. So it's going to have long buffering times afterwards. You're going to take a video, you're going to stop, and then you're going to sit there and go, why is my camera just loading? So that can be really frustrating. Definitely avoid that. But yeah, looking up the specs of your camera and looking up the best SanDisk Extreme Pro cards that you can get. I probably have some on the gear list. I really love those, and they've honestly had some great deals on 64 and 128 gigabyte cards lately. So worth checking out. Here we go. Antonio Bausman says, do you recommend a lens hood? I see a lot of photographers using them. What are they for, and should I use one? Lens hoods are to minimize lens flare, which is light sources going around the edge of your lens and angling directly into the lens, pointing directly into that lens, causing flaring and weird issues like that. Let's see if I can create some flare for you for a second. Here's so this flashlight is actually a tiny LED chip on board light. And that means that I can make it really, really sharp. So you're not seeing too much right now, but as soon as I start shining that in the lens, there you go. You get those lens flares. So a lens hood on Instagram, we're getting crazy lens flares there. You see that? Like that looks kind of cool, but that's a little extreme, right? Having a lens hood will help detract from that. So let's see if I can do it. I'm going to do it on the other side to try and get, here we go. All right. So we're seeing some on the stream right now on the big camera. This is Sony A6400 with the 16 millimeter Sigma f1.4 lens. This is their DC contemporary line, and it's really nice lenses. So the lens hood is on right now. So normally you would see a lot of flaring there. If I took the lens hood off, you would see it, but it only starts about here because we have that lens hood there. And it will also make it stop when it's out on an angle like this. So still not seeing any flare, still not. Here we're starting to get little bits. There we go. Now it's actually hitting the lens. So I have to be at about a 40-degree angle from the lens as opposed to almost a 180-degree angle. So if you're anywhere that light can hit the glass of your lens, in the center of that glass especially, you'll be in danger of getting those lens flares. But those lens hoods help minimize that. There are some universal ones that you can get. They're like these rubber kind of flop out things, and they can be really, really helpful. You got to be careful that you don't push them out too far if you have a wide angle lens though, because you'll actually see that as vignetting in your image. Vignetting is that black ring that goes around your image sometimes. If you have a lens that's adapted that's too small, there's a bunch of different ways that can actually happen. But yeah, lens hood. I use it sometimes if I'm shooting out in broad daylight and it's very, very bright outside. I'll definitely use one. If I'm trying to just kind of minimize the amount of wash on my lens of just general light hitting the lens, then I can use that to kind of specify a little bit. Hi there, Shake. Nice to see you. It's good seeing people popping into the Instagram chat there. So yeah, I would definitely use them, especially if you're shooting outdoors. If you have extreme light that's shooting directly at your lens, and if you don't want to get lens flares. If you do, pop those things off. I'm doing great. We're doing a little AMA session right now about photo, video, media production. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask them there. The Instagram chat does go a little bit fast sometimes, though. So if you pop over to UXL's Facebook or YouTube, then we'll definitely see those questions. Cool. Okay, so Robbie Stamatakis. I'm butchering names today. I apologize. Robbie Stamatakis asks, do you find yourself editing your photos a lot after you take them? Typically, when I go through an edit, I'll actually I'll shoot in RAW typically, and then I'll bring those photos into my computer and I'll bring them into Adobe Bridge, which is a great organizing program. I'll go through there and I'll star the photos that I actually like. And then like based on pose or if the person's in focus, things like that. And then I'll actually go through, collect all of those starred images and open those only in camera raw. So I'm not actually going fully into Photoshop. And a lot of people would say, you know, I might as well just go into Lightroom. That's true, but that does take opening up the entire program. Camera raw pops open out of basically Bridge, and it allows you to just do like a quick edit on all your photos, kind of sweeten up things like saturation, contrast. But if you're shooting raw images especially, it gives you a lot more latitude in your edit, so you can adjust your exposure, your white balance, all these things after the fact, and they're going to be much more forgiving than if you were editing JPEGs. So I do edit my photos, but that's just because I shoot in RAW all the time. Whenever I'm taking a photo with my my mirrorless SLR cameras, it's going to be in RAW format. The only times when it's not a RAW image is when it's coming from my phone. So either the S9 or the Galaxy Note 10 Plus, those will be edited JPEGs, whereas my A6400 and A6500 from Sony both take raw images only. I don't even mess with the JPEGs on those. And I'm sure JPEGs, they work fantastic in certain situations where you need more memory or you need to be able to write faster to your cards. Maybe RAWs are, you know, you take 4 or 5 shots and then your camera goes buffering, and then it lets you take more photos. To avoid those delays, switching down to a smaller file size or, you know, JPEGs can help do the trick. But I don't typically go crazy on them. I don't like to go too nuts on the images that I've been taking lately. Again, it's mostly about video too, so I like to get my settings right in camera, at least for what I want, and that helps me sort of be a better videographer at the time too. It's like training. I try to keep it all in the same sort of wheelhouse. Thank you for the question, Robbie. Sanav Ankog asks, how do you find nice locations to shoot in? Is there some kind of resource I can use to search scenic spots in my area? Absolutely. So one of my favorite places to find cool locations is looking up my local film commission and see if they have any sort of like locations listings or things like that. There's also websites like Locations Hub, which is an international website that features production locations around the world. And oftentimes as a photographer, you can get in touch with those locations and say, hey, how would you feel about me coming out and taking some photos? I'm hoping to, you know, scout the location for a possible photo shoot or for a video shoot or whatever it is that you actually want to do with it. If you want to sell the images that you're about to take of that place, though, you have to specify that. You have to let them know if it's a location, hey, I want to take some images to sell of this location. Is that okay? If you're taking photos of a model or things like that, then it's going to be much more acceptable because you're actually creating art there. It's not just about the location. But yeah, checking out your local film commissions, which around the world there's going to be film commissions, and then also checking out stuff on Google Earth, like going onto Google Maps, going into Street View, finding weird locations that way. There's some cool stuff that way. Back in the day, now I wouldn't suggest this. This is me saying disclaimer here. This is not something I would suggest doing because technically this was illegal. But what I used to do is go onto websites that had urban exploration resources. So people who would go out to abandoned locations like old facilities or mental hospitals or, prisons that were abandoned back in the day. And they would document like, hey, this is a way to get there. This is where it's located. This is the entranceway. They'll take some photos and things like that. So finding resources like that, if you want to basically trespass on the places, that's a good resource to find. But you can also use resources like that to actually get in touch with the real owners of these places. Oftentimes the Film Commission will have tabs on local real estate agents, so you can get in touch with them. They can check the listings out and say, oh yeah, this is so-and-so that runs that, that manages that property for that owner, or they manage the client, not necessarily that property. So they can get in touch with the person who actually owns the facility and possibly give you permission to get into these places. So that is an ideal. If you have an abandoned location, you can actually get inside with the permission of the owner. They can typically get you to some better spots, or even offer you power for the day if you pay for that location. There's some really, really cool things that can happen if you get in touch with the right people. So don't be afraid to reach out. Don't be afraid to get blocked from those locations just because you're reaching out. Just try and go through it the right way, and then your production insurance will thank you, first of all, and second, your ability to use the footage later on in life will also be much greater. So I wouldn't use that as a method to trespass. I would use that as a method to find locations that are legit, that you can get in contact with the owners and get your way in there legitimately. Yeah, okay, so that was a great question, Senav. I appreciate that. Lyda Horwich asks, I plan to do a bit of traveling. I want to take photos in the places I go, but some are known to be dangerous. How should I go about keeping my equipment secure? I mean, so it doesn't get stolen. Okay, so I've got some interesting experience with this, actually. I woke up with a frog in my throat this morning, so I'm trying to keep as much water going down there as possible as we talk today. Apologize if my throat gets ragged as we start to talk. Okay, plan to do a bit of traveling, keeping things secure so it doesn't get stolen. So there was a vest that my parents got me when I was about to go on a travel trip. And at the time, I thought it was like, okay, yeah, they're getting me a vest. It's got 1 million pockets. It's whatever. They're trying to keep me safe from pickpocketers. I didn't think that was an issue because I'm big bearded guy, and we don't have to think about those issues as much as most other people in the world. So I was glad that I did that, though, because there were a couple situations where I was walking through city streets late at night in Europe, and I realized that there was literally no one around to help me. And if anyone decided that they wanted to take one of the 3 cameras that I had on me, the gimbal, the backpack, any of that stuff, I was at their mercy. There was actually a robbery in the gas station. Well, it was like a convenience store. It was a 24-hour convenience store that I was hanging out in so I could get sunrise photos over a river in Dublin, Ireland. And it was totally worth it. I love the images that I got. I'm really thankful for that trip and everything, all the experiences that I had. Met some really cool people at the actual place. Got to chat with a guy who was, down on his luck, and he shared some really valuable life experience with me. But the store got robbed. I was sitting there with probably $10,000 worth of camera equipment, and they probably stole $300 from the register. So it felt a little bit like, oh crap, like these people could literally turn around, notice me, and it was an armed robbery as well, so it was extra scary. But it turned out fine. I kept my head down, tried to stay out of the situation. No one was hurt, that was the main thing that I was worried about. But yeah, it's definitely one of those things that you want to be safe when you're out in places like that. But having your equipment on the inside of any jacket or anything like that can be paramount. Also, having camera straps so that even when they're inside of your stuff, they are literally strapped to your body. I was walking around with a vest that I could zip up over my camera as it hung around my neck. So it was extra secure there. And then all of my other stuff was actually inside the jacket, zippered into pockets. And it felt very secure that way. I did have some stuff in a backpack, and that backpack, whenever I sat down, I would loop both of my backpack straps around my legs and put it between my legs. So that way, like, yeah, it would make it rough if I tripped or something like that. If I had to run suddenly, it would make it a little difficult. But if I fell asleep while I was sitting there, which was my main concern, then no one would be able to just kind of slide my bag out from under the table and walk off with all of my cameras. So, Stephanie, thanks. I'm glad I'm okay too. That was a very fun journey. It was definitely dangerous at times for sure. But yeah, that's the nature of walking around with a ton of camera equipment on you. That is for sure. Peyton the Swede, I appreciate the request to be in the live video. We're not doing any guest video for now. We might do that in the future at some point. I want to have some discussions on here and have some people join in and chat actually in voice and in video. But that'll be for the future for sure. Yeah, so I got to go back in the questions. There's a bunch of people that have commented on YouTube, and I haven't gotten that into our chats here. Let's see. Let's go through here. Good info, thanks. Don't they have like 2 terabytes now? Probably. I would be very careful about the expense of those, and also the actual speed of the cards, because when you're getting that big, I think they can start to sacrifice speed, like read-write speed, and those things are paramount in your camera. All right, Ashley says continuous shot mode. I'm sure Instagram and Google Maps Street View are great scouting tools too. Oh yeah, Google Maps, absolutely. Search hashtag your town name on the gram to see what other people are taking photos of. That's a really good piece of advice. I gotta use that. I'm sure a lot of restaurants, small businesses, or venues would trade location time for publicity shots too, especially on days off or non-busy times. Yeah. I think you might be right. I checked and it looks like a scam. I mean, the 2 terabyte ones. Yeah. So the largest ones that I was seeing from SanDisk were 1 terabyte. And honestly, that's the company that I just go to for my cards. I do use PNY every now and then. If I just need like a tiny card for something kind of throwaway. Like I got a couple of PNY cards, which were very inexpensive. I think there were 16 gigabyte cards or 32 gigabyte cards for my drone. And then I realized that my drone takes such small video, and it's very compressed. So a 16 gigabyte card would last me about 200 flights. So if I recorded the entire thing front to back. So that's what I've literally been doing. I haven't changed the card since day one. Yeah, cool. All right, so we got some great comments and questions in there. Let's see here. Lida Horwich, I hope that answers your question. You can get some great straps for your cameras. There's a company, Digital Photo, that's got some cool straps and stuff and ways to attach those straps to your camera really easily. You can rig things directly to your camera. You can put all kinds of straps directly to it using a small rig cage or anything like that. Camerar also makes some cool cages and whatnot. I think it's Camerar, or is it Came TV? Gotta stay hydrated. Okay, so those of you watching on Instagram, we are going to be ending the Instagram soon. We're only on a 1 hour time limit, so we're getting to about that time limit right now. So definitely come over to UXL's either Facebook or YouTube account and join us there. Or you can also hop in on Twitch and actually get your chats featured right over here, if I'm not mistaken. FCMG_producers log on Twitch will be where you can find us. Or you can also find me on my Facebook page, FCMG, which is Full Coverage Media Group on Facebook. My bad. Too many names and things flowing through my head right now. Let's get some coffee in me. Oh God, that's so good. Oof. Those of you that are here, type in the chat. What's your how do you get your caffeine? Is it tea? Is it coffee? Is it energy drinks? Or are you not a caffeine person? We'd love to hear. Okay, let's move on to our next question here. We had a great one from Lida. That was fantastic about traveling. Now let's see here. Let's move this over so we can actually see the chats at the same time. There we go. There's all kind of comments going on YouTube. Ashley says, Eliza, I missed the convo on websites. I use both WordPress and Shopify. Okay, she's answering web questions. Do you just have no web experience? Cherry Coke. Ashley's method of getting caffeine is cherry Coke. Panama Alex says, I don't. Caffeine intolerant. That's probably good. Honestly, I have some trouble with the falling asleep every now and then. Instagram, what's your method of getting caffeine in, or do you not drink caffeine? I'm drinking black coffee with a little bit of water in it right now. Help take that edge off, wake me up a bit. Liz says Red Bull. Liz, I always knew you had wings. All right, here we go. Next question comes from Juliana Cine, which I have seen that name on here before, and I probably butchered it last time too. I apologize. But Juliana says, I want to buy equipment to start my photography business. Right now, I am a student and have no money. Do you recommend I take a loan or use credit? I worry that I may not get my first few clients fast enough to keep up with the payments. That is a very realistic concern. And honestly, I would wait. What I would personally do is, before you start going into a photography business, start building a client base while also working a job. And I know that can be ridiculously frustrating to get a job so that you can get a job. But Elizabeth Williams, I do not use a beard straightener. Not always. Sometimes I do, especially if I'm about to trim this thing. I'll just literally straighten it with a hair straightener and then like trim it down. But mostly just good old shampoo and conditioner. Beautiful. Anyway, back to the question. Okay, so I would avoid taking out any sort of loans, using credit to get your equipment. That's a trap that I've fallen into, especially in the last year or two. I got the opportunity to start doing Amazon reviews and getting paid to do Amazon reviews for companies. And they were all honest reviews, just so you know. If I didn't like the equipment, I didn't put up a review of it. I would send it back and talk to the actual company, try and get some things resolved. And if they did, then I would get the new equipment and do the review. But yeah, Amazon, they also have, okay, Instagram is ending right now. So we're going to continue this over on Facebook and YouTube at UXL, or check us out, Full Coverage Media Group on Facebook. Also, twitch.com/FCMG_stay or _producers log. You'll be able to join in the chat. We'll see you all soon. We're going to be continuing this here and talking about how, when, and why to upgrade your gear. So join us there. We'll see you soon, Instagram. Peace. Okay, cool. So that live video is paused. I'm going to have to get this uploaded because Instagram does not like to wait anymore. It has a very strict problem with that. So let's go here. Share to IGTV. All right, apologies for the wait there on our stream. I will be back to the question in a second. I got to figure out a way to do this better because Instagram just does not allow time for waiting right now. If I sit here, this 2-hour video goes away. I did that on one of our recent streams. Yeah, there we go. Okay, next. MG producers log answering questions from the class. We'll just leave it like that. Okay, and we'll post it. Done. Okay, that's out of the way. I just wanted to get that going before we lose anything. Lovely. Okay, so we're talking about buying equipment. So I've fallen into the trap of buying things, putting it on that Amazon card and then getting the refund, but sometimes it doesn't always go right back to the Amazon card. So yeah, you have to be very careful about paying that stuff off right away. And I would typically try to justify your purchases somehow. We're going to be talking about this when we get into the actual tutorial in a little bit. We have one more question. Yeah, one more question to ask, and then we'll be into that. But it's going to be a lot of balancing incoming work with the gear that you get. And you always want your cost of equipment and your cost of doing business to be much lower than your actual income levels. So if you don't have any clients yet, keep the equipment that you have. Try and find a gig that is something steady. Maybe you can find something in the field like editing photos. That's something that people are always looking for. And it is typically hard to find editors. So if you can get in with some people and start editing some content, you can get picked up by other people really quickly. But if you want to get into actual photography, start doing some other work, get that budget up, and then spend some money on that stuff. But be very careful about your purchases. Like maybe you could go with crop sensor instead of full frame, unless you absolutely know that you need that full frame look. You could even do like a phone photo studio where it's just, hey, bring your own phone or use our really nice in-house phone and we will actually get you some really great like Instagram ready just photos that are like you get them in seconds, but it's the lighting setup, it's the actual location, it's the nice spot that you have that makes it totally worthwhile for them. So mitigating your client's actual needs and your budget can be difficult, but start as small as you can and still pick up work, and build from there. There's a lot of things that we're going to talk about in the next little segment, like linear upgrades as opposed to vertical upgrades. Taking the camera that you currently have and adding little things on the side to make it better, as opposed to upgrading your entire system. So now you have to sell all this equipment and you have to get used to this new equipment and X, Y, and Z. So I'd be careful about doing anything on loans or credit. If you have the ability to get a business loan and you know that you're going to be, cranking through that work, that work is there, maybe go for it. But I would still be very careful because this industry is very prone to change. It's something where like people can, they might have a verbal agreement with you and then a week later they say, hey, I never said that, blah, 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 because they're trying to get out of their contracts. So just be careful, really weigh that option and the cost over time versus how much you think you're actually going to earn with it, or do some test stuff first. Rent the equipment that you think you're going to use, see what the actual cost for use is and what your rates are. So do that first gig with rented equipment. Maybe don't buy it right away. There's a bunch of options for how to figure that out, but I think that's the best advice that I really have there, Juliana. I appreciate your question. That's a difficult one to navigate, and that's a really interesting question as well. I would love to hear everyone's experience with that. If you've, bought equipment on credit or used a loan or anything like that, if you managed to secure a business loan for your photography business, I would love to hear your experiences in the chats. Cool. All right. So we got one last question from Luella Alvia. I'm currently using Photoshop Lightroom Classic on a MacBook Pro. The new update for Macs will not work with this version of Lightroom. Do you recommend the cloud or are there better alternatives? I don't like paying monthly subscription fees. Honestly, if you have a program that works, that you're used to, that you can do great edits in, maybe stick with that. I use the Adobe Cloud. I do the subscription. I think it's around like $50 a month or so, and or like $75 a month. But I need some water. But when it comes to the Adobe Creative Cloud, I also use like 6 or 7 of their, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of their programs queued up. 7 programs that I consistently use. So I'm using more than just 1 or 2 items on the suite all the time. You can get an individual subscription just to Photoshop. I think it's $19 a month. Might be like 25 or something like that. But basically, you can pay for just Photoshop. You can pay for just Lightroom. if you want just a single program. But I wouldn't really suggest the cloud unless you're planning on using more of the cloud. So Premiere Pro for video editing, Audition for audio. You can use After Effects for special effects and CGI and stuff like that, for tracking, motion tracking. Prelude for preparing your video files and organizing stuff. Adobe Bridge can be used for organizing your photos and marking which ones you want to actually edit, doing camera raw edits and quick things like that. So if you're going to be using a bunch of programs, yeah, definitely check out the cloud. If not, maybe check out an individual subscription if you want the latest and greatest features. But if you have a program that works really well for you, that you're comfortable with, that you're familiar with, it might not be worth the learning curve of upgrading if you can actually keep that program stable on your computer. Ashley has an older iMac, and she can't upgrade to the newest version of the cloud because of the restraints of that. But the programs that she has on there works fantastically well for her. I used for a long time, like this was when I was much younger and couldn't afford to pay for subscriptions or anything like that. I for a long time used a portable version of CS4, which is an older version of Photoshop Creative Suite 4. And this program was definitely cracked. It was on a USB drive. You know, you'd plug it into any computer and you could use it on any computer. I didn't have a laptop that was powerful enough to do it. I didn't have, my own desktop or anything like that. So I didn't have the program installed anywhere. I literally had to go to the computer lab at my school to edit any photo that I wanted to edit. But back in high school, that's what I had to do to get things done. So yeah, there are some other alternatives. There's definitely other programs, like there's GIMP for Mac, which is a free editing software. It's got a different learning curve though. So you can get free programs and you can change programs from what you currently have, but you have to be aware of that learning curve as you switch over to any sort of different technology or software. Ashley says, yeah, I'm using CS6 on my iMac and CC on my much newer laptop. The only time that's an issue is when using InDesign, which shouldn't affect photography. Photoshop versions are pretty interchangeable. Yeah. The new things that have come out on Photoshop are things like content aware move. There's, some AI features that have been added in, some better content aware stuff. So it's really, unless you're getting into those like hyper specific sort of needs, or like you really want to up your workflow as much as possible because you have a high volume of work, then it can be useful. But if you have a good workflow, if you have a good program that's putting out good quality stuff, then maybe it's not worth upgrading. Cool. Okay, so that's our question period. That was everything that we had in the pre-registration questions. Thank you to everyone who added a question in there. I really appreciate going through these, and it's been great chatting with everyone on these streams. Ashley says, yeah, the newer tools aren't worth the upgrade if it's going to crash your computer. That's very true. You got to be careful about what you can handle, what your systems can handle, what you actually want to learn, what you want to spend the time doing, etc., etc. So yeah, we're going to get into our actual content now, which is a tutorial here. Not really a tutorial. It's more of a discussion. I'd love to get feedback as we go through this topic, but we're talking about how, when, and why to upgrade your gear as a photographer. I'm going to be injecting some little, videography stuff here and there. We will touch on that again in about 10 weeks, probably. Got the hiccups. Got to get this, get some water in here. Whew. So, alrighty. So the one of the first things that I want to talk about when it comes to how, when, and why to upgrade your gear is the making logical jumps in your gear. So something that I've had to come to terms with is, for a long time, I've always wanted to upgrade to full frame cameras, and I've always used crop sensor cameras, which are 1.5 times crop into a 35 millimeter sensor. But as time goes on, I'm starting to realize that maybe the smaller form factor of those cameras is more worth it to me, because I don't like having to carry a giant bag with a ton of crap, because the way I work, I always bring everything with me. I always bring in my extra lenses, my extra equipment, all this stuff. And it does get a little frustrating because if I'm bringing all full frame equipment, the lenses are 10 to 15% heavier. The everything is larger. The equipment is all more expensive. So if it gets damaged, it's more cost for me to replace these things. So in recent years, I've found myself going in the complete opposite direction. I've started getting more equipment for cell phone and smartphone cinematography and photography, more things for action cameras, more stabilizers for smaller pieces of equipment and for smaller cameras. And it's actually been way more valuable to me, where I can increase the amount of work that I'm doing. My current client base, say is $500 a month. Nothing crazy. If I add, this smartphone thing, suddenly I have the ability to do, underwater footage because the S9 is actually waterproof. And it's not going to cost me $10,000 to get an underwater cage or something like that. And I can shoot it in 4K because these new cameras are just getting better and better all the time. Things like that allow me to charge more. So my monthly income starts to become $600-700 a month. And yet the cost of that item, it's something that I already have. Like I have that cell phone. It's already a plan that I'm paying for. Being able to use that in a different way suddenly makes it that much more valuable. Now, what if your employer looks at you using that cell phone and goes, oh, okay, I'm going to have to talk to them about that. That doesn't look professional at all. Maybe you need to upgrade just that camera a little bit so that those tools are going to be, of the right appearance for the gig that you're doing, or they actually have the quality that your gig demands. There are some clients out there that don't give a crap what you look like. You could be in a t-shirt and gym shorts with, a crappy little camera. As long as you get awesome footage and it works for what they're doing, they're going to be happy. Meanwhile, there are other ones that are just worried about the appearance. They have you there for an event, so they want you in a suit and tie. They want you, using the biggest, baddest camera rig that you have, even if they don't actually, they might even be just putting it out on Instagram or something like that. They don't need you to shoot 8K, but they want you to. So it really depends what your client is paying for and what your clients are willing to pay for and what they're looking for. So doing those logical jumps in what your client actually needs, what will get you more gigs, what will be more valuable to buy over time versus rent over time. Things like that can really change the trajectory of how you want to upgrade your gear. But one of my best examples is going from crop sensor to full frame. A lot of people have this idea that photography can't be professional photography unless you're using a full frame camera. And those full frame cameras often start around $2,000. So costs are getting lower, quality is getting better. Yeah, there's things like the A7R III now, which has 60 something megapixels. So yeah, you can get a whole lot of quality out of this stuff, but do we really need it? Are you blowing your images up to billboard size? Are you going to be having them on, is this a wrap for an entire house, or do you not actually need 60 megapixels on your camera? A lot of these smaller cameras, like the A6400 that we're using right now, it has a 6K sensor inside of it. So that means 6,000 by 4,000. And that sensor packs in a whole bunch of data, but it's actually only outputting at either 4K or 1080p, but it still uses the full sensor readout. So you're getting a whole lot of quality that's being down processed into a usable file at the other end. So even if it's not necessarily the fastest, best bit rate, all this stuff, it's actually going to be usable on the other end. I'm not having to take crazy footage and do a ton of editing to it to make it actually something that we need. So depending on the style of gig that you have, it's definitely going to determine what sort of equipment you can upgrade to. Depending on how much equipment you can bring with you, that'll determine how big the equipment you can get. So size is a factor. And then the linear versus vertical jumps. So vertical jumps is upgrading to a new system and, going from crop sensor to full frame, or micro four thirds to crop sensor, or, you know, hey, I'm trying to think, like a 1/3 inch sensor to a 1 inch sensor. Things like that can be upgrades. Like there's action cameras out there that, you know, you can start off with a used GoPro Hero 5 Session, which I think I brought over. Nope, I still have them sitting over there on the shelf. So like a Hero 5S nowadays you can get for about $200. This camera can shoot 4K footage. It can shoot slow-mo in 1080p. It's got great autofocus. It's got a tiny, tiny form factor. This camera is 1 inch square. In fact, I'll go grab one. I'll be right back in a second. So, I made a linear upgrade when I had the Hero 3 Plus, which was a great camera. Does 4K, but at a slower frame rate. I think it was like 15 frames per second, which wasn't really usable for me. But it also does 1080p. It did slow-mo. It had good battery capacity, but I could make it better by adding one of these Brunton batteries. This is supposed to be like a 6-hour battery pack. But, you know, that makes it not waterproof, and there's all kinds of concessions that you have to make when you're trying to do linear upgrades on this thing to upgrade the battery life and all that stuff, right? So that makes it a bigger form factor, all that crap. It's not so much of an action camera anymore. It's a little too big. It's not waterproof. So I made a vertical upgrade. You could still say that this is somewhat linear just because it's the same company. But I moved to, here, I'll take this thing out of the actual cage so you can really see the size difference. Upgraded to the Hero 5 Session. So you can immediately see the size difference in these cameras. It's crazy. This one's literally only the size of its lens. It's 1 inch square. This one, meanwhile, is more like 2.5 inches square. And it's got a bigger thing. It's not waterproof. This is waterproof. You don't need to put it in any extra case. It works just the same like that. So you can do some really, really cool things with these little tiny cameras. You could almost argue that this was a linear upgrade because it's the same system. I didn't have to learn any new software. I didn't have to like learn how to use the Hero 5 camera. I already knew how to use GoPros because I've been using GoPros. But then this sort of wasn't enough at one point. The low light footage wasn't that great. I had to do a lot of denoising in post. My workflow was taking longer because people were expecting higher quality footage from action cameras. So I made the jump to this thing, and I'll take the little extra pieces and parts off first. I already showed this one off on the stream for a little bit, but I ended up making a I got things bolted to it. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to take this thing apart. I made a vertical upgrade to a different brand of camera for my actual action camera. I was using, I'm not going to take it out of the cage. So this thing's in a cage, so it's about 10-15% larger than it normally would be. This is Sony RXO Mark II. Sweet little camera. Very small still. It's about the same size. Let's see, where did I put this thing? It's about the same size as this camera now, but this thing can shoot 4K 100 megabits per second video, up to 30 frames per second, 24 as well. It can do full HD at 120 frames per second. And the other nice part is it's going to match my other Sony lenses, my other Sony sensors much better. It's an f4 constant aperture, about a 24 millimeter equivalency. And this thing was amazing. The quality of the sound is fantastic. All that stuff, but it's very, very much more expensive than this. This is about a $700 or $800 camera. You can get a new, A6400 for that much. Meanwhile, these things nowadays, these little Hero 5 Sessions go for like $175 refurbed. So these are very inexpensive these days. They do 4K, they do slow-mo, they do pretty good stuff in good lighting conditions. But this thing works great in low light. I can shoot S-Log. It also has 10-bit 1080p, which is something that I could do on my other Sony cameras. So if I'm shooting 8-bit footage with an action camera and trying to put it into a timeline with 10-bit footage, it's going to stand out. Meanwhile, this blends right in with my other cameras, and it gives us a really great option. It's also waterproof. It gets great sound in either conditions. It's just a really, really cool little camera, and it also has a flip-out screen. So say I turn this thing on, it'll actually show you what you're looking at. So you can use it as a vlogging camera. This is turned into my little daily carry. So this is like my little cinema camera that I actually bring with me, and that's a little upgrade train that I took over the past couple of years. Now those GoPros are basically obsolete. Like, I don't really use them ever, and I'm going to be giving a couple of those away. The 5S is the 5 session is going to be going to Nate Will, who's always here supporting the streams. He's a good friend of mine, and he does a whole bunch of work, and I want to see him using some nice, sweet quality stuff for his. I think you can live stream with those. There's some really cool things that you can do with those GoPros. So definitely worth checking out, but they don't really work in my workflow. So now I've started doing linear upgrades on this camera. So, you know, I wanted to do more, I got a lens for my cell phone. I was doing another linear upgrade, so like upgrading a device that I already have for this guy, which is the Galaxy S9. It's a smartphone. The first thing that I did was get moment lenses for this thing. Where'd I put them? Okay, so that consists of getting a phone case. This phone case has a specific mount on the front of it. You can kind of see it there. It's called a bayonet mount. You slip your phone into the case like that. Pops in nice and easy. And you got it's a pretty cool looking case. I love the wood style. They have black ones as well. But now this means that I can add moment lenses to my camera, which is, they're a little bit expensive. They're about $200, between $100 and $200 each. But they have great quality, and they're like very high fidelity lenses. So our cell phones have some pretty dang good quality lenses on them already. But when you add these on, they legitimately improve the quality. So this is a telephoto lens. This is a 58 millimeter telephoto lens, and it just, like, not only does it look fantastic, it makes your camera look much higher quality. It honestly starts to look like a real camera now, just in a very, very small form factor. But hey, Wanderer Fakir, it's really great to see you. Our friend Wanderer has been he's been going through some trouble in where he's living right now. There were cyclones that passed through his area. He wasn't able to join us for class for a long time, so it's great to have you here. It's really good to see you, buddy. I'm glad you're safe, and I'm glad that you've got power. We care about all the students here. I'm another student just like you, so we're glad to see that everyone's safe and good. Glad to have you back, man. Cool, yeah. So linear upgrades to my cell phone to get better images. I started using this thing on actual gigs. Like, I was getting paid. There was a Sesame Street shoot that I knew that there would be a lot of young kids who are very like tech kind of prone. I find if you're walking around with a big camera, all the kids are gonna go, "Oh wow," and like stare directly at you, basically. So I wanted to avoid that, and the only way that I thought that I could do it was by using a cell phone. And it worked out really, really well. I was walking around with this cell phone with an actual lens on the front, so I got better quality footage. I could do zoomed in stuff, and then with this 18 millimeter wide, we could do some. I just saw your another comment there, Wander. Appreciate it. We could do some wide angle stuff, but it gave us some options between different lenses, and to use the wide and medium lenses within this camera as well. I basically had like a four lens kit that I could walk around with, and no one would really bat an eye. You know, being able to do that can be really important when you're out in public, because otherwise everyone's just like looking directly into your camera lens as you walk by. That was a problem that I had when I was shooting footage at Music Fest a couple of years ago. We were working on a documentary for PBS, and the rig that I had was a backpack rig that had 2 arms sticking out of it that held my gimbal in front of me. So I had arms everywhere. There's equipment here, clips and safety harnesses and whatnot. And I'm, walking around with this floating camera in front of me, and you see everyone go, whoa, like right into the lens. And it's like, shoot, we can't really use any of this footage because people are literally too astonished by the camera rig to just look normal. So that was kind of an unexpected constraint that we ran into there. And using something like this, no one would have batted an eye. Even just a smaller handheld camera, people just don't pay as much attention to DSLRs or SLRs as they used to in years prior. It's become much more commonplace to use these things out in public. So making linear upgrades to smaller devices like this can be a really, really fantastic way to upgrade your gear and actually make producing easier for you at the same time as getting rid of some unexpected issues that, you could be facing. For me, it was people looking directly into the lens as I was shooting public, footage and photos and stuff like that. So one of the lenses that I got for this thing is a slightly different style of lens. And as a photographer and especially as a videographer, I had always wanted to get into, well, I guess not as a photographer at all. It doesn't really help with that. But just to keep going on this upgrade train, as a videographer, I wanted to get into anamorphic really, really, really bad. There is it's just a sort of feel that you get with anamorphic footage, which is when you're taking an image like this, you're taking a 16:9 image like that, but you're actually shoving more into it. So you crop the image in, not crop the image in, you squeeze the image like this by 1.33x for the anamorphic lenses that I have anyway. That gives us a 2.35 to 1 aspect ratio, which means it gives you widescreen. But it's really hard to actually like show that without it's really hard to explain that without showing it. So I'm going to try and do a little quick setup here. I might switch over to a different camera, but I'll explain this first. The anamorphic lens, it's basically the front of the lens is curved like this. So it's got like a kind of a bubble to it, and it takes in wider footage and then gives you this very squeezed, very, everyone looks really tall kind of image. But to do that with cinema cameras and with SLRs and things like that, the cost would have been just nuts. The lowest cost anamorphic lens that I could buy right now just came out in the past year. It's by, what's their name? Sirui, Sirui is the name of the company. They made a 50 millimeter lens that can attach directly to Canon, Sony, and Micro Four Thirds lens mounts, which means that I could get one and attach it directly to my camera, and it would actually have, if I'm not mistaken, autofocus, which is crazy because typically you would have to have a normal lens inside of there, so like a 50 millimeter lens, and then another lens physically attached to the outside of that lens that you would have to adjust as well. You would have to set your normal lens to manual and then adjust both concurrently. So it just becomes a nightmare when you're trying to focus with these things. And it's still like $1,000, $2,000, $5,000 for those manual lenses. So this Sirui company came in and like really blew some people away. But still, like $600 for an anamorphic lens is a little too cost prohibitive for me. So the first thing that I picked up was this little Moment lens. Moment actually has anamorphic lenses, and I'll take off the lens cap here and show you. And you can see it's got that sort of curvature to the front of it. You can even see that the eyepiece in the center, and this is facing up and down right now. This is in the proper orientation. The eyepiece is elliptical like that. And that's to help kind of get that shape in there, but it's also it gives a specific type of bokeh when you're taking images. So if something's in near focus, you'll see the background images, any lights are going to be elliptical in shape. So they're going to be stretched upwards when you actually stretch your footage out. It gives a really, really cool effect. I personally love it, and I feel like it has a very cinematic feel to it. So I started shooting footage with this thing, and I was realizing, okay, this is great and all, but I only have the wide and the medium view on my on my S9. So I'm not really getting a whole lot out of this lens. I only have 2 basic focal lengths for this thing, which is cool. I love the way that it looks. It really has some beautiful lens flares and whatnot. But I wanted to do more anamorphic stuff. So when I finally got this and I got the cage for it, I realized, oh, this cage has the same thread on the very front of it as Beast Grip lenses. And if I'm not mistaken, did I actually grab the lenses or did I not? Here it is. Okay, so I grabbed some other lenses for this thing. You can get, for about $50, you can get wide angle lenses, telephoto lenses, which I have over here. They were iographer lenses. I think it was a 32 millimeter lens mount, or like a 37 millimeter lens mount or something. It's like something kind of strange like that. Let's see what it says on here. Does not say anything. But then Beast Grip had this anamorphic lens that had the same sort of thread mount. So I could now do a linear upgrade, and all of a sudden, this sweet little camera has an anamorphic lens on it. So there you can see, I can show you some footage from it, and you'll see what I mean. Let me find that quick, and I'll show you. Actually, no. We're gonna come back to anamorphic on another day. This was just going down that linear upgrade train, and I should really kind of stick to the subject a little bit. So yeah, that was the major thing that I wanted to get to, was anamorphic on more than one device. Now I have it on not only the S9, but I also got a Moment phone case for my Note 10 Plus. So there's 3 lenses on that camera, 2 of which can actually be used with the bayonet mount, and 2 look really good with the Moment anamorphic lens. Both are 1.33x, so you get that 2.35 aspect ratio, which can look really, really cool. But, that was an upgrade that it took a couple devices to get to where I wanted with it, but the total cost was maybe around $300 to get to anamorphic on multiple devices. So that gave me a whole lot of options, gave me a whole lot of ways to get there, but it wasn't cost prohibitive. So if you're thinking about going into something weird like anamorphic videography or IR photography, things like that, a great way to test it out is on smaller devices like that. With IR, you can do Backbone makes an IR kit for a lot of GoPros and smaller cameras like that. So you can get like a Hero 3 Plus Backbone kit, which now takes off the IR low pass filter on this thing, takes the front lens off, means you can adapt it to C mount lenses. Like there's crazy things that you can do with that sort of technology. And also slightly older technology, because slightly older stuff like this, I had a point that I wanted to make later on, which is like in uncommon gear for upgrades, is finding older stuff that has new updates to it that can make it really powerful. So Backbone is a great example where you can add these C-mount lenses, and they're tiny, tiny little inexpensive lenses, but they're typically used for CCTV cameras. So you can get like an F1 lens that's like a 230 millimeter or something like that, or like a 75, but that's like a 200 millimeter equivalent. Really, really cool things that you can do with uncommon or basically forgotten about gear, because there's always people that are trying to make their old stuff as good as the new thing, and these are some great examples of that. So definitely check out Backbone. That's a cool company. I've liked their products before and had some cool experiences with them. So yeah, definitely worth checking out. Also, Beast Grip makes this same sort of thing. Like you can get this lens and attach it to your actual cell phone by getting the Beast Grip camera cage. So that's this camera cage that fits on most cell phones. I think they advertise all, which is cool, but I'm not too sure about that. So yeah, you can upgrade those things really easily that way. And if you're shooting video too, you can add things like microphones and whatnot, lights to improve your setup. But you can keep those things all kind of tied to the form factor of the device that you're working with. So if I'm going out with a cell phone or with smaller devices like that, the biggest light that I'm going to bring with me would be something like this. So this is an on-camera light. It's a Viltrox L132T. I think that's on the gear list. But this one I've sort of phased out. This is more so just like if I need something that's very wide and will give some good wraparound on a subject. It's very soft light as well. You can see the diodes are very, very small and filtered through some cool panels there. So lights like this can be super handy. They also have NPF battery mounts, so you can just click a battery into these things and be good to go. You don't have to lug around an entire AC kit or like an AC battery like the one that's back there. Those camp batteries can be great, but they're also, power intensive. So it takes a lot of power to charge them, takes a lot of power to keep them charged, and they can expend that pretty quickly. Like running this light that I have right here would actually burn out the battery completely in about 2 hours. So if you're going for a longer gig or something like that, sometimes using smaller equipment can be better because it's more expensive. It's less expensive to get like 15 batteries for one device than it is to necessarily buy a larger device and have the same ability to shoot all day long. So mitigate your client's needs, your needs. That's our logical jump section. The bullet points to remember from logical jumps really are linear versus vertical, if possible. That way you don't have to learn new camera systems. You don't have to learn new software or new workflows or anything like that. You're literally just upgrading the stuff that you already have. Size consciousness, which is, if you're going up to full frame or if you're going from micro four thirds to crop sensor, your lenses are going to get bigger, your flashes are going to get bigger, your lights are going to get bigger, your lens mounted stuff is going to get bigger, your gimbals are going to get bigger, your camera itself will get bigger. Everything goes up in size. Next is gig consciousness. Do you need the gear for a job? Is it worth it to rent or buy? Sometimes it can be worth it to just rent that item for a gig once. Sometimes it can be worth it to rent it to try it out, see if you actually like it, if it works in your workflow, and then possibly upgrade to it in the future. Another point that I made here that I didn't really touch on is money doesn't equal value. So the cost of an item doesn't have a direct correlation to how good the footage is going to be. Sometimes higher cost actually means, more features, but it's actually harder to use because you need to know more. You need to know what you want going into this thing. Meanwhile, smaller things like cell phones, great auto exposure on these things. The technology has been getting better and better and better and better and better on auto exposure for this stuff. This thing, pretty great auto exposure. Not perfect, but you can set it really specifically to how you want. So someone pulling this out of the box might think, wow, this has really terrible auto exposure because it's not set well. So it really depends on the settings of the camera, the amount of settings that the camera has. So really do your research when you get into these camera things. That's why they're great to rent, because you could probably rent this for about $30 as opposed to buying it for almost $800. Again, not a frugal purchase, but it can be if you're trying to get into anamorphic and all of these other interesting things that you can do with this camera. Because like now I have a waterproof anamorphic camera. That's kind of cool. I don't know if anyone else has done anamorphic underwater. I'd be curious to see how that works. And then last thing is be aware of the learning curve, which kind of has to do with the linear versus vertical. You might not do as well with unfamiliar equipment. There have been times where, I've been told that the client has, a Sony HFR camera, which is great. Those are fantastic, but I'm not familiar with that one. So it's more worth it for me to give them a bit of a discount on me bringing my own equipment. I get paid a bit more, but it's also, I know that I'm going to do a good job. Whereas if I'm showing up to a gig and I don't have any sort of, I don't have any gear or something like that that I'm being paid to bring along, then you know, I can kind of feel like a fish out of water. It's good to have that support gear with you. Bring as much as you can, honestly, and just make it as compact as possible so it makes sense. Daryl Henry, great point on price. By the way, picked up a set of 3 GVMs for $350. I saw that actually. That came up in my affiliate feed, and I really appreciate you doing that. That definitely helped me out. I'm really curious. Was that the 800D? Because I would love to check those out too. I've been thinking about getting a set of those. Either the 800D or I think it's the 80. No, an 80QD is something else. But yeah, also not a bad idea to find out who's editing and what they're editing on. Yeah, that's exactly true. That's very, very true. Basing your delivery, your content delivery on what the client actually needs is huge. A lot of people will go out and shoot 4K footage and then realize, oh shoot, my employer actually wanted vertical format cell phone footage for this. Damn. You know, you don't have to go all out sometimes. And oftentimes it's more valuable to you to not go all out because your workflow is going to be faster. You know, maybe the quality is still going to be way over what they're looking for. You just really have to mitigate what your client is looking for. So yeah, be aware of that learning curve. Be wary of unfamiliar equipment. Definitely try and get experience on as much stuff as you can. But if you feel like it's going to affect your actual quality, you know, be careful of that change. No, sir, not 800s. Okay, was that the 520S's, the ones that I actually have over here as well? Because those are so nice, and I'm really happy that you got them. I would love to hear your opinion once they come in. Definitely look into getting some NPF batteries, because having those nice, powerful lights as battery-powered stuff that you can take out anywhere, like on a trail if you want to do photos out there. Beautiful, beautiful stuff when you're doing a little bit of added light and it's daylight outside. It can really make your subjects pop off the background. It's cool stuff. A great hair light for those is that YN. What is the number on this thing? Let me check quick. YN216. The YN216 is one of my favorite daylight ones. Yes, you got the 520S's. Daryl, you're my man. Yeah, so if you're looking for like a little portable, very light hair light or something to go along, those can be good. But you've got 3 lights in that kit, so that should be more than enough. I'm excited to see what you come up with. I would love to see some images or anything like that. Send them over to FCMG_stay on Instagram. We'll chat and we'll get your opinions there. That'd be really cool. All right, so the next sort of category of how, when, why to upgrade is making feature-driven choices. So when you're looking at the features of a camera, there's a couple questions that I like to ask. I'm going to get a sip of water before I go through these because I am parched. I hope someone clips that out and sells that as you know, stock audio. Phone, the remote app is kind of buggy. Yeah, I've noticed that the like the lights that I have the same sort of thing. The remote app isn't that great. I don't find myself ever really using it though. Typically when I'm on a shoot, I have a light relatively near me. So if it's just off at a 45 and then the other ones are acting as backlights or like one's lighting up a background, set those background lights to slave mode. And then the one that's closest to you to master. Set those slaves on different channels, so channel 2, channel 3, and then your main light on channel 1. So when you're on channel 1 in your master, you can set the master however you want. If you send to, sweet, cool. Daryl's sending us examples already. If you set your secondary to group 1 or 2, I think they start with group 0. So master on group 0, you can change the master however you want. You switch to group 1, then you can adjust that secondary light. Group 2, your third light in the background, and then switch back to group 0 to set your master however you actually want it. It's just a really nice workflow. You don't have to walk around everywhere, trip over cables, X, Y, and Z. I really like them in studio settings where you can power them on, power them off, all that stuff, and keep them kind of set together. But I love the way that they automatically pair, and there's just really no issues there. Would love to hear your experiences, get some feedback on those things for sure. Cool. Okay, so feature-driven choices. The questions that I would ask there. Will the features of the equipment actually make your content better? That's kind of like a hard question to ask. I understand that, and it's a rough one to answer yourself as well. But is it going to make the editing process easier for you, or is it going to make it more difficult? Are you working with 8K footage now instead of 1080p? Are you maybe not making a jump that's big? Are you just going to 4K, but now you have to upgrade all your storage capabilities? You need to be working on an SSD, or else you won't be able to process fast enough to actually edit. Would love if you could control all three via phone app. Oh geez, you can't. Maybe if you group them and then you have the master and you're controlling the master via the phone app and they're all on one channel, that might work, but who knows? I'm not sure how the channel system works with the phone app. I honestly haven't used the phone app in the last 2 years. Okay. Will the features of the equipment actually make your content better? So does it make it easier for you to produce? Can you sync your audio directly with your video? Questions like that can really make a difference in what you actually choose as your equipment. Maybe you need that XLR port and you need to have phantom power in order to do what you need to do and make it one file that you're editing from. Maybe using a broadcast switcher would be your best bet, because then you can record the program out. So you just have the cuts that you make, so you can do your edits live. Maybe actually using the camera at its fullest potential. So say you're using a Red camera and you've got that thing up to 8K and you're doing all your different shots. Maybe you need that because you need to shoot raw footage. It really depends on what you're looking for. If you're taking photos of someone, maybe that those photos are going up on the web and you want them to be small and you want them to be right in camera and you want to be able to send them to them right after the shoot is done. Then you would shoot in JPEG. You would make sure all your settings are right in camera, and you would be, keeping that JPEG to a medium size, because you don't really want to have to crop things down. You don't want to have to downsize your images. You just want to send them and be done. So depending on your workflow, the speed of at which you need to work, that can really determine your stuff. Will the equipment allow you to provide a better service to your clients? So we talked about clients' expectations before. Some clients are going to expect you to look the part, to look very professional, to have a big camera and all this stuff. And if you have something that's too small, maybe they might not hire you again for that next gig. But there are other employers that only care about the final product. They don't care how you look. You could be covered in mud and have, bunny ears on. Who knows? But as long as you get great footage, they wouldn't care if you have, if you're shooting the entire thing like this all day, going around with your GoPro Hero 5 session like that, So it really depends on your client, what they're looking for. But if you can provide a better service to your clients in whatever aspect they determine as better, it will get you more work. It will be worth it in the end if it's within that threshold. If you don't have to wait 10 years to get this thing paid off, you don't have to wait 2 years to get this thing paid off. If you can pay it off with gigs in the next 6 months to a year, cool, sounds good. But that's all up to your budget, your capabilities, your upcoming work, all that stuff. Feature-driven choices. Will it allow you to raise your rates? That's something else. So I'm working on a drone license right now. I'm working on the the pre-licensing stuff and the prep test. So I've been going through this course knowing in my head that, okay, if I have a drone license, all of a sudden I can get a different type of gig that I was not legally allowed to do before. Things like drone gigs in Washington, D.C. and places where there's a lot of air traffic. You can get paid a whole lot if you really know what you're doing. If you're licensed and if you have a nice drone, or you can rent one, then you can really rake in a whole lot on an hourly rate. It's really insane because that's a niche market. It's strictly regulated. So you have to know all of the regulations, the FAA regulations and rules and guidelines. You have to know how to be able to communicate with airports and air traffic control. You have to know how to be able to request, access to fly near certain places. So there's a whole lot that of extra that goes into it. But by adding that to my repertoire, I know that I'll be able to raise my rates as a videographer, because now I can do gigs that are specialized. That's like there's someone that I know through a friend that operates the Russian arm camera in film sets. So that's, you're driving a vehicle and there's a camera arm that has a giant concrete block on it that counterweights the thing and sends this camera 25, 30 feet out from the car as you're going 65 miles an hour. So something that's that specific can really get you a lot of like niche work and get you some high paid gigs. So finding weird niches to work in and becoming the best at that in your local area can really, really, really be helpful when it comes to raising your rates. And sometimes you can do that with equipment. I was basically the only person in the area that had motorized sliders, gimbals, all that kind of motorized sort of stuff, that motion controlled equipment. And I also had it for small devices to large devices. I could put my cinema camera on a slider, or I could have a tiny little slider that was dedicated just for a cell phone. Doing things like that and diversifying in very specific ways and kind of uncommon ways is a great way to stand out as a photographer or videographer and get more work like that, and also raise your rates for the work that you do. Next question I ask is, will it get you more work, or more work in general, or more work from existing clients? Like, will it get you more clients, or will it get you more work from the clients that you already have? If you can get more work from the clients that you already have, that's the ideal. Send pics to IG. I will check that in a moment here. As I pick up my camera with the moment lens. Get it? Moment. So let's switch over to the other account. Pull up this message. Here we are. Let's see here. Image hasn't gone through just yet. I'm also, this phone might be a little bit slow right now, but I'll keep this up and we'll check that out soon. Cool. Daryl, it's great to connect with you on Instagram. That's cool. Okay, so yes, more work or more work from existing clients. Getting more work from existing clients is fantastic. That's something that increases the value that you already have to people that like your service. So it just takes something that's good, people who already like your service, people who already hopefully, applaud your services vocally to other people. But it raises the quality of people that you've already impressed. So that's good. That can help really lock in those relationships. Getting new clients is fantastic because now you have more opportunities for work. But if you have too many clients, that can become a little bit of a mess as well. We kind of covered that in the last question with the will it raise your rates? And then here, the last one that I have is, will it make your work easier, faster, better, more enjoyable, less physically demanding? Will it improve your experience when producing media or producing content? Like, a lot of people ask, as a photographer, am I able to, nice, Daryl, you're getting your part 107 as well, controlled airspace. Oh yeah, that's important stuff. Good, we're both in that together. So yeah, the whole making it easier for yourself, making it more enjoyable, making it less physically stressful, things like that can be really, really important, because that can make you want to do the work more often. And if you want to do the work more often, then you'll actually be earning more often, which is fantastic. That's a win-win for everyone involved. Also, if it's more enjoyable for you, if it's easier for you, if it's faster for you to do this work, then your clients are going to appreciate the work that much more. They're going to see that, you're enjoying yourself, that it's not this huge stressful burden that they're placing on you, because that can kind of turn people off from your services. If things seem so difficult to you, like maybe something just didn't go right on the shoot, and so you explain ad nauseum all the little details that went wrong, which is something I do way too often. Obviously, I've been talking for almost 3 hours now. A little over 2. Anyway, I wouldn't be surprised if it was 3. But yeah, if it's like a real big burden to you and that shows, it's not going to be as easy for your client to go, hey, let's hire that person because they seem so happy when they work. No, it seems like a chore. You don't want to have someone doing chores for you. You want them enjoying what you're asking them to do and really getting into it and getting creative, because otherwise you're just getting, crap that someone doesn't want to do. So yeah, that can definitely, it can make your clients want more work from you. It can make your experience easier and make things more cost effective for you to produce. So less costly, both physically, mentally, and monetarily, financially, I guess. Yeah, let's get a sip of water in here. Okay. The next sort of category of how, when, why to upgrade gear is deal-oriented purchasing. So there are times of year, like in the United States, we have Black Friday, Cyber Monday. Those are specific times where technology is typically very inexpensive. You can get some great deals on equipment, TVs, computer stuff, cameras, all that stuff. So knowing when to purchase things can be really important. Also, right before new things come out or right after new things come out can be a great time to pick up the last generation camera or whatever piece of equipment used. A lot of people will be just upgrading because it's the new thing. They just feel like they have to do that every time new things come out. There's brand loyalists out there that need to have the newest thing all the time. So you can kind of capitalize on that and use those opportunities to pick up stuff that's relatively inexpensive for what it is. There was a period where the Blackmagic ATEM Mini was about $200 because all the people who got them for like testing and you're going to do a sponsored segment about this piece. A lot of people, they had gotten it and the firmware wasn't up to date enough. Like it wasn't stable enough for them to actually do what they wanted to do. A lot of people were trying to put in 4K and do some weird stuff. Like I was actually, and I was having a lot of problems with that before. So they would abandon it. So these, even before the actual production models came out, you would find ATEM Minis on eBay and on Amazon used, but like new for like $200. And that's how I got mine. Mine was actually like an early production model. It got sent to someone for a review. They did the review. They didn't like it that much, obviously, because they put it up for sale. And I happened to snag it online. So when they started coming out for actual sale, they were $300. So I saved about 50% of what it cost me. It would have been 50% more to do that. So getting things early or getting things a little bit late can be ways to save on money as well. And then there's one-time deals every now and then, like sometimes like the anamorphic lens from Moment. This thing was recently on sale. They got a huge batch sent back to them for some reason. And I think it was all just like people trying to send them in for refurbs. So they refurbished all these lenses and they were selling them at like $100 instead of like $185. So you get about 50% off discount there. And that's something that I'm not sure they'll ever actually do again. They're a very small company, Moment. They're a Canadian company. So, support your small businesses. Check out Moment lenses. Yeah, so that can be a great way to get deals too, is to wait for or be aware of strange circumstances within the industry and, be on that newsletter for, all the different companies that you want to get stuff from. Like another example is my next point here says, be careful not to fly too close to the sun and back projects that never get created. Be realistic when it comes to backing prospective gear because of the speed of the changing market. So technology changes so fast these days that Kickstarter campaigns and GoFundMe campaigns and things like that, where they're funding a piece of tech that they want to produce, it can either be a great time to get involved because who knows, maybe that product will get some crazy updates and hey, you already paid for one, but they put an extra $200 worth of value into it since then. Or maybe they messed up with their pricing and it never actually gets produced. There have been a bunch of situations where things like that have happened, but we also get some really, really cool equipment out of there, like the Lytro light field camera. This is a tubular camera. It's shaped almost like this, where you take an image and the sensors are three-dimensional. So it goes down the length of the barrel and all the inside. So when you take these images, you can actually adjust your focus, either near focus on a subject, and like you can click on someone's face and it'll focus on that face, and then the background will get blurry, or you click on an element in the background and then the person in the foreground gets blurry, or you can have everything in focus. It literally would take the focus field of every point in the lens, so you could, after the fact, choose your focus. Really, really cool stuff that comes out of some campaigns like that. Like trying to think of another example. There was the CeroE 50mm anamorphic lens just came out of a crowdfunding campaign. So just be careful, just be realistic when it comes to those things, and don't back the 14,000 megapixel camera that they're going to sell for $5. Like there's some things that just aren't realistic, and you can kind of see that beforehand. So be a little wary of those perspective gear things. So that's all I wanted to talk about with deal-oriented purchasing. But now is one of my favorite categories, which is uncommon gear. One of our biggest things our biggest hurdles as photographers is standing out from the crowd. There's a lot of low-cost photography stuff nowadays, so a lot more people are getting into the field. The barrier to entry in photography has gotten very, very inexpensive, to the point where people can, get a cell phone plan and spend $50 a month, and now they've got a great cell phone that can shoot 4K footage and takes 4,000 by 6,000 4,000 by 6,000 pixel images. Like there's crazy stuff that you can get with cell phones, with tiny little pocket cameras. There's like the Foveon Vlog Pocket is this little tiny clone of the DJI Osmo Pocket, and this thing's got 4K. It does high frame rate 1080p. It takes great photos. It's got a stabilizer built into it. It's got a battery. It'll attach to your phone. You can live stream with the dang thing, and it's like $250. Meanwhile, to do that, to actually walk around live stream with your cell phone camera and a camera pointed on you, you would have had to have like a laptop and a backpack that's running Streamlabs and all this other crap. So technology is updating real fast. So one of the hardest things for us to do as videographers and photographers is to stay relevant by using uncommon equipment. And one of my favorite things to do that with is vintage gear. So a lot of people, they see the next newest thing, and that's the only thing that they really care about. But they don't really start caring about things like, putting a backbone on a GoPro Hero 3 Plus, and then all of a sudden it becomes a much higher resolution image. It's got no IR cut. You can get lower light stuff. You can throw lenses on this thing, and suddenly it becomes an interchangeable lens camera. And that's all for what, like $200, I think, for that kit. Might be lower, like $100, $150. But there's really, really cool stuff that you can do with old equipment, because people are constantly trying to make that stuff stay relevant. My Galaxy S9 is years old at this point, but there's lenses that are coming out for this thing. There's updates to apps and all that stuff. There's new apps that you can get and take images with. We're getting to a point where things are staying relevant for longer, but then we're also getting newer equipment and upgraded equipment at an ever increasing rate. So it's a really interesting time for technology. In fact, recently I set up a webcam. I feel bad saying that. It's basically a shoulder cam. It's a VHS camcorder that I figured out has a composite out if it's plugged in. So the power cable actually takes a video feed out and then sends it to this little converter box. You can plug in the red, yellow, and white cables, like the composite cables for left, right audio and video, plug that in directly into there to a USB composite capture device. This is like a $15 capture card, and now I can actually use a VHS camcorder that my dad owned. It was, it was expensive back then. These were nice cameras. It was like $2,000 or something like that, which is crazy expensive nowadays for that kind of resolution. But I can literally live stream with a VHS camera. I absolutely love that. There's really cool things that you can do with this, like older equipment. There's constantly being updates to film cameras. There's now digital backs that you can get for certain film cameras and whatnot. So, don't throw out that old tech. Try and find ways to upgrade it, to do those linear upgrades and make it relevant with modern equipment. Now there's other stuff like there's just unconventional gear, which is different from uncommon. It's just gear that had a very specific purpose, and maybe we could use it in ways other than its specific purpose. For example, I think it was Sigma. I'm going to double check this quick. Sigma camera DP. I think it was the DP. Yes. Okay, so Sigma had this really interesting line of cameras. The Sigma Quattro cameras and the Sigma DP. Yeah, the Quattro cameras and the DP series of cameras. There's also DP Quattro, but anyway, these are cameras that had something called a Foveon. Here we go. They had a Foveon sensor in there, which is a very different style of sensor than we're used to using nowadays. It means that you can't really take anything slower than you can't use any shutter speeds that are faster than like 1/60th of a second. So you can't take a photo at like 1/2000th of a second with this thing, because the resolution, the color, all that stuff just isn't there. It's not going to look good. Yet, when you take images at like ISO 100 on this thing, lower the ISO as much as possible. I'm trying to find some specs on here. Sigma Quattro. No, let's go Sigma Foveon specs. Okay, so Sigma DP2 is the camera that we're looking at, I think. Yeah, okay, 14 megapixel Foveon CMOS sensor. So it's a little sensor. But let's see, where is the megapixel rating on this thing? Effective pixels are 5 megapixels, and yet this is a 14 megapixel camera. Where's the high resolution one? High resolution SD Quattro. That's 29 megapixel mirrorless camera. 25. There's one that's like, let's see, the DP1. One of these has just an insane amount of like an insane megapixel rating. It's something like 47 megapixels. Okay. Renowned for unmatched quality, the Foveon image sensor is Sigma's proprietary technology, which captures transmitted light in a vertical 3-layer sensor, red, green, and blue for each individual sensor. So one sensor basically for one sensor for each color channel. It's the only one of its kind. The Foveon sensor produces full-bodied images, rich in tone, gradation, and texture with a 3D feel to them. The new Foveon X3 Quattro offers an even higher image purity. Okay, so I'm looking for the actual specs on this dang thing. Foveon X3 sensor. X3 sensor resolution. Okay, newly developed Foveon X3. This is, I mean, back in the day, so it's not new by any means. These are old cameras. I want to see, is there like a date on when these things came out? They got to be years old at this point. specs. Let's look at this thing. Okay. So like this is an APS-H, which is a 1.3 times crop sensor. So it's a little bit larger than crop sensor, smaller than full frame, takes images that are about 6,000 by 4,000, 6,192 by 4,128. But the megapixel rating on this thing is 45 megapixels. So that's huge. That's like some new cameras. It's also 14-bit image depth. So you would have to have like a 14-bit monitor, something that has really high quality to be able to even edit these images properly. And for a lot of people back then, that was insanely expensive to be able to get one of those. It's still $1,000 camera to get it new. You get instant savings of about $1,000 off. This is the Quattro H, which is relatively new out of all those cameras, but it still uses that Foveon X3 Quattro CMOS sensor. Let's go back here. Foveon X3 sensor. So independent tests of each individual sensor shows them at 10 megapixels. Yeah, okay, so it's a 10 megapixel image. But because you're stacking those sensors, you're actually getting a lot more sensor depth than anything else. So you get some really interesting like reds and green absorption because of the depth at which the sensors are placed. It's a very different camera system. It's antiquated, and yet you can get higher quality images like landscapes and stuff like that, non-moving subjects, compared to Bayer filter sensors, which is the sensor types that we typically use. That Foveon sensor was something completely its own and like really sat in its own category for a long time. But a lot of people didn't know how to use it correctly, so they would get blurry images or really high noise images, or it would just something would look wrong and they're like, what's going on? I'm trying to take photos at night and I can't get anything. It's like, well, it's meant for a daytime landscape photography. That's like it. I'm going to check back on IG, see if that image came through. Oh, hey, there we go. Wow, that's great lighting. All right, this was Daryl Henry. It's an image of his son. I will Daryl, I'm going to ask you, do you mind if I show this to the group, because I think you got some really great effects with these things. Are you using the do these have RGB as well? Is that what that blue light is in the background? Because if so, looks great. And you're using perfect like 3/4 front lighting with a hair light on the back. It makes them stand off really nice from the background, gives them good shoulder accuracy and all that stuff. Well done. It looks, the only thing that I would suggest, I think you could raise your shutter speed a little bit. It looks like you took an image and I'm seeing like a little bit of, hold on there. Okay. So I like the image. I was trying to zoom in on it. But I'm seeing like a little bit of, what is that? Motion blur. So, to get rid of motion blur, just raise your shutter speed. You can also raise your shutter speed and your ISO if you need that light. But if you can increase your lighting and raise your shutter speed, that would be ideal. Very cool stuff. I'm glad that these are working out for you. And then finally, the last things that I wanted to mention are using old digital cameras in new ways has become kind of like a good uncommon use for gear. You can use it to create certain feels, like the 5D Mark II or Mark III. That video footage has a certain type of feel to it because of the bit rate, because of the bit depth, all that stuff. But then there's other things, like you can find deals if you're looking for like really high color accuracy footage for some reason. As a videographer, you could look into old Cinealta cameras, which are going to give you 444 color space and just really great bit depth, but they're going to be, under $5,000 because no one really uses them anymore. They're antiquated. But you have to be careful about the memory card systems that they use, the battery systems that they use. You really have to be careful about those applications because that can get expensive. The peripherals on these older like cinema cameras. Also, Ari actually has a camcorder. Is it Ari? Wait, no, I'm thinking of something else. Shoot, it might be the Ari camcorder 4, 4, 4, 4. This thing is crazy high quality. I don't think it's R. No, it's not RE. My bad. I'm thinking about a different camera. Aja. That's it. Aja is the company. AJA. Does a camcorder here. Find the name of it. Okay. Cinema camera, maybe. Cinema camera. On caps. Yes. Okay. The Aja Scion. It's a CION. This is a camera that takes PL mount lenses. It's only about $1,800, which is going to be less than like a full frame camera nowadays. It does 4K. It does 2K. Can do high frame rates, if I'm not mistaken. This is the, let's see, Aja Scion specs. Okay. It has an electronic global shutter, which means that you're not going to get any, like if you move your camera left and right, digital cameras still scan top to bottom. So that means that you get that little wobble in things, some jello effect, which is, what is that also known as? Shoot, I completely forget. But it happens when you pan your camera left and right, or truck it left and right. I guess trucking is back and forth. Whatever, you know what I've been talking about here. Okay, the electronic global shutter means the entire image gets shot at once, so that can give you a much more accurate feel. It's 4K APS-C sized sensor, so it means it's the same sensor size as my little super 35mm cameras here. You can shoot 23.98 or 24 frames per second. It's got some crazy specs for it. Let's see, shutters. Yeah, okay. It goes by shutter angle, which is a little different than shutter speed. It does also have the options for shutter speed and stuff like that. No worries, Daryl. I know that there's a delay in there. But some of the key features is it shoots, it can output 4444 footage, which is the highest bit depth fidelity for color and for contrast and things like that. So you can get some amazing footage, but you have to record to Aja Pack SSDs. So those are proprietary SSDs that are super expensive as well. They're about $1,000 each. So unless you can rent that, shot at f4 640 ISO. Okay, nice. So let's show Daryl's image that he shot on here. I'm gonna pop it right in front of the camera. It's a little bit different from what I can actually see because we're on there, but that's a great image. We got the lighting in the background. I'm still curious if that was the RGB is the actual GVM lights. Yeah, we got some lighting in the background. You got the hair light. Oh, sorry, just bumped my my audio here. You can see the hair light along the side of his face here. That's also backlighting a little bit. And then he's got 3/4 front lighting from this side. It's very nice. The RGB is apparently from that. Sweet, man. I gotta check that out. Mine don't have RGB, and I'm bummed I didn't get that that feature. But I love those lights, so I can't really complain at all. And I have a 50 RS, so Godox for key and blue light. Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay, nice, sweet. Well, that's great that setup's working for you. I'm really glad that you got that going. So yeah, my point is with these old cinema cameras is you can find some really crazy stuff, some really high quality for relatively inexpensive. You're not spending $24,000 on a camera to get 4444. Instead, you can spend $2,000 and just rent those little cards for it. Let's get back to our thing here. The last thing that I wanted to mention is older Nikon cameras and older Canon cameras can actually be hacked. There is a website called Nikon Hacker, which will allow you to download firmware updates and cracked firmware for your older Nikon cameras. I believe before the 3300 series. So if you had like a 3300 or 3400, 5300 or 5400, anything after that time period isn't going to be eligible. But any of those older like Nikon D3000, D31, D3200, Nikon D7000. I think some of the D5, D6, maybe some of those older ones have those options too. I don't think the D5, but you can hack the firmware and you can get higher bit rates for your video. You can remove the record limit, the time limit, and then Canon has the same sort of thing. It's called Magic Lantern, and that actually allows you to get a little bit closer to that gets you a little bit closer to raw footage, which is you're not compressing the actual footage that's coming out of the camera at all. You're just taking it directly off the sensor, which can be really great for upgrading these older cameras for free. As far as I know, Magic Lantern isn't I don't know. Magic Lantern might have a cost associated with it, but Nikon Hacker is just open source firmware upgrades. They don't guarantee that they're going to work, but they do have like ways to check and make sure so you don't brick your camera and accidentally just turn it into a paperweight. So be careful before you do these things for sure. Let's see, Magic Lantern download. Hey, all right, so Magic Lantern is a free firmware add-on for Canon EOS DSLR cameras. So these are for DSLRs. You're going to be able to do that with the 5D Mark II, 60D, 50D, 600D, the Rebel T3i, T5i, all of these cameras. You're going to be able to bring a little bit more quality out of those, so you can keep using those older cameras for as long as they can possibly hold on, as long as you have the ability, and then upgrade when you really need to. So that's everything that we had to talk to about today. So I appreciate all the questions and all the comments. Everyone's been really active. It's been great having everyone on YouTube. I really need to get it attached to the chats here so we can have everyone filtering through and everyone see the content in the recorded versions of these streams. We had, something like 50 or 60 comments on here, so got to get those working in there. Definitely ask me anything on Instagram or Twitter. You can feel free to message me anytime, FCMG_stay. I do accept direct messages. My Instagram is private, but if you send me a follow request, you'll likely get added in there. Also, if you would like to support these streams in any way, I would greatly appreciate that. These are all kind of volunteer streams. Me and UXL have been working together. They help spread these out to people, and I help deliver the content. So if you would like to help support the streams, go to patreon.com/FCMG. We have $1, $5, and $10 a month tiers. The $10 a month tier, if I'm not mistaken, will grant you access into the FCMG preview crew, where you can send messages directly. You can put messages out to an entire group and post things and say, hey, how's my ISO looking on this? Do you think I should change my settings? Let me know what you think of this edit of my footage, etc. And we will get you feedback on that within 24 to 48 hours. I'll personally be in there if anyone posts things, and I will definitely give you feedback as soon as possible. But there's also other people that are in there, other professionals in the field and whatnot. And then the $5 tier, I believe, it might be the other way around, but the other tier gets you into our Discord channel as well. And I do game nights. So on Twitch, if you follow FCMG_stay, you can jump into those videos and actually game with us. We do some multiplayer streams. We do some games with friends and stuff like that. But I'm always running an AMA, so you can always ask me anything about photo, video, media production. I'm always happy to chat about that stuff. Even if I'm playing Call of Duty, send me a message in the chat. I'll notice it eventually, and we'll chat about it. So you can definitely find me there. You can also find me on Facebook, Full Coverage Media Group, or on the web, fullcoveragemediagroup.com. UXL, you can find these on the UXL YouTube and Facebook. Definitely go check them out. They've been kind enough to sponsor these streams and help get them out to a lot more people. So I feel like I'm actually, having conversations and getting some great questions from students. Check out their courses. You're able to pre-register when you're signed up for their newsletter, able to pre-register for these streams and ask those questions that I will definitely get to. I always go through those questions at the beginning of the stream so we can make sure we can get them on Instagram and get them over here. So yeah, thank you everyone for watching. I really appreciate you joining. Thank you to UXL again for sponsoring these streams. It's great to be a part of this, and great to have these actually going somewhere. So I'm going to leave you on the end screen, and we're going to play that outro music. But everyone have a great day. Stay safe. Keep producing stuff. Send me all kinds of, images, and send me all your cool stuff that you're working on. I want to hear about your projects. I want to hear about what you've been up to. Wanderer, stay safe. I'm happy to hear that you're doing okay. Our friend here was through a cyclone recently, so that's crazy stressful stuff. And I hope power comes back to the area reliably very soon. Anyway, thank you all. It's been a pleasure. I'm going to leave you on that stream ending, and peace.